This is Erica, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I'm very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She is amazing at what she does. She has a law firm out in the Worcester area that handles both family law and real estate. So let's get to it. Today, we're going to be talking about family court and probation. And I think that this sounds like a very exciting topic. I want to thank you so much for coming on today. Welcome, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So let's talk about So it says here there's a department for probation. What is the probation department exactly?
Well, it's one of those things that I always say, you have to go to probation to my clients. And they go, I'm not on probation. What are you talking about? And that's always the response I get. And I go, no, it's probation in family court. Why they call it that, I don't know. They used to call it family services, and that made a lot more sense to people. And now they just call it the probation department. And so again, everyone gets that, I'm not on probation. I didn't do anything criminally wrong. Why are you talking to me like that? So when people say that, don't always assume it's a criminal thing. Even if you're talking to your friends or family and they say, I went to probation, again, it could be criminal, but it also could not be. So it's one of those things that you really have to go, probation, where, for what? And get more information rather than you jump the gun and assume the worst. But probation department is basically people that work for the probate and family court. They work on a different side of the courtroom themselves. They're a different agency. They don't work for the court, but they are individuals that have specialized training so that they can deal with probate and family court matters.
So, wow. I mean, that's interesting how just the perception of the whole thing changes just by changing the name of the department.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, it was one of those things that we really didn't want to see that. And now when you go into the Worcester courthouse, there's a big banner that says probation. Don't call it that. And then underneath it says family services. And I'm like, really, guys? So it makes it difficult. Again, I have everyone, oh, did you check in with probation? I'm not on probation. No, that's where our case is starting. If you didn't stand in that really long line, now we're going to be sitting here for another hour. So it's really fun because as soon as I do that, I always make sure everyone knows exactly where to check in, knows what line, and I kind of have to explain it. And after the first time, of course, everyone's perfectly fine. But that first time is like, what are you talking about? And, I don't know a client that ever goes, okay. Everyone always does a double take and go, what? So I explained it an awful lot.
I mean, I can see why you would have to. It sounds scary. So who works there? I mean, are they all probation officers?
Technically, that is their title. They're probation officers, but again, not probation officers in the traditional sense that you think of when you're dealing with the criminal world. They are, they might have other backgrounds. A lot of them had previous lives where they did DCF work, or they did social work, or, some of them are just parents that have, taken the training classes and gone through all of that stuff to learn how to be a probation officer. So there's no criteria. We're obviously in the probation department and criminal world, you have different training skills. Their skills are going to be, okay, how do we interact with these people? What are the types of cases that we're going to be addressing? And, they get well-versed in the law and what happens in family court very quickly because they see this stuff day in and day out. And usually that line is, could be anywhere from 100 deep. On a good day, it's 20 deep. So that's good.
Sounds like the unfun Disney World lines. There's no fun ride at the end.
Exactly.
So what do they handle? What kind of cases?
They handle everything that the probate family court tells them to handle. So essentially, when you're checking in with them, you have to fill out their forms. They're going to run a query on all of the parties involved. So they're going to check your criminal record. They're going to only check it in the state. So if you have somebody that is, convicted felon in Connecticut, you'd want to tell them that. They probably won't care, but at least there might be a note in the file that we can have information that we can get in front of the judge. And obviously the judge can always tell them to run a query for a different state. That just takes an exorbitantly longer time period. So we don't really want to do it unless we really have to. But they're going to run your queries before you even see it. They're going to make sure that they have your probate and family court file. They're going to make sure that they have all relevant documents, such as your financial statements, pleadings, pretrial memos, whatever is required for the court. They're going to have all of those documentation. And then they're going to ask you whether or not DOR is involved or DCF is involved. So DOR is Department of Revenue. So that's if there's a child support order and it's going through DOR, we're going to need to probably talk to that. And if it's DCF, then they're going to need the name of the caseworker, and they're going to call the caseworker to at least get an update on your family. And that's before you've even seen them.
Wow, that sounds like quite a process. So I have an interesting question for you. I mean, I know that in a lot of states, cannabis is legal in certain amounts. And I see that in your list, you have the hair and follicle treatments. Like, what is it allowed when you're a parent? Because a lot of these parents are downing the gummies nowadays to try to relax at the end of the day, and maybe they're not drinking as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it is legal in Massachusetts. Does it mean you can do it with your kids? Don't know. Depends on the circumstances. If you're an alcoholic or you're a drug addict, then no. If you have a medical marijuana card, then we can't stop you, but we can limit the thing. So, and if you're just an average Joe, can you get away with it? Again, depends. Are the children with you during this time? Are you doing it not when they're with you? Usually that's one of those things that the judge is going to say, well, if you have a medical marijuana card, I can't do anything about it. But anything else shows up, or you don't have a medical marijuana card, then yes, it has to be negative. So it really depends on the circumstances of the case and what the judge has ordered and what the outstanding issues are involving, drugs and alcohol.
So that's something you can do if you know that the other parent is constantly having parties and, drinking every night with their kids. You can sometimes put a limit on that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no reason that people should feel like they can go out and party all night when they have children. Sorry, that's part of being an adult and being a parent. You don't get to do that all that often. You get to save that and splurge when, the other parent has the child, but you don't get to do it all the other times. So, we definitely want to put those safeguards in place because, again, depending on the age of the child, an infant's not going to be able to call 911 and be able to talk to the police and tell them what their issues are. Where obviously a 15-year-old hopefully isn't doing it with you, because we've had that issue as well. But a 15-year-old knows how to pick up the phone and call the police. They're probably more inclined to want to do that, but not necessarily for the drug problem. So again, we need to look at the circumstances of your particular case.
So back to what we were talking about specifically, like, what does a probation investigation entail?
So probation investigation is where they're going to follow a court order. The court order is going to dictate exactly what they do. So are they interviewing the child only? Are they interviewing collaterals? Similar in nature to what a GAL does, but it's in a condensed version. Limited amount of time, limited amount of people that they can talk to. And obviously, since they're not getting paid, limited resources. But at the end of the day, they will do what the order says. So sometimes, again, it's only talking to the child, and they'll make a report based off of what the child says. Sometimes it's what is the best interest of the child. And again, we're going to talk to the child, the parents, and some collaterals. Maybe it's an aunt or an uncle or a school or medical provider, something to that effect. And then they're going to write that report and say, this is what everyone told me. And at the end of it, they'll write recommendations and conclusions saying, I find that this, and this should happen. And this is the reason why. And this is, plausible, or this is unbelievable, whatever the case may be.
So I've never heard of this before, but like, What does a job seek entail?
So those are the people that have that don't have a job. And the court says, get a job. Sir, you quit your job and you were making $75,000 a year. I'm going to impute income of $75,000 a year. Go find a freaking job. So it is literally the probation department putting you on a list and saying, you have to show me X amount of applications that you have submitted for employment. You are not earning to your capacity. You have an ability to earn more money, and the court expects you to earn that money. So that's essentially what a job seek program is going to do, is make you come in and show them all the documentation showing that you complied. And you have to do that pretty much every single week and have as many people as they told you. So if it's 20 people, you have 20 applications, you show them all the documentation, you show them the update, and guess what? Next week, you'll be coming back for 20 more applications. You're gonna get very familiar with that caseworker and that probation officer until such time that you have a job or the court orders it to be terminated.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't heard of that, but I have in that term, but I have heard of people being forced. I mean, I actually know someone who just was way under earning and, just got out of the army and decided not to go get a job, even though they were given a few great opportunities, making 70, 80, 90,000, and, decided they didn't want to pay for their kids. So they decided to just collect their retirement, and that's it. And so that, it's an interesting situation because kids are darn expensive, aren't they?
They are. And, again, you didn't make this child by yourself. So the reality is you have to support this child. And that means until they're emancipated. So, great. I'm glad you can retire early. Who cares? You still have a kid under the age of 23. Get a job, support that child. And that's what the court is going to ultimately say.
So once they do all of this research, can they actually testify in court?
Yes. I mean, the simple answer is yes, they can testify in court. Generally speaking, they're not going to testify, but sometimes the court will say, I need to talk to the probation officer because I need more information, or I need them to talk to DCF, and DCF isn't available. So they're going to be kind of the messenger to convey that information. So sometimes the court will go, hey, come on in and testify about X, Y, and Z. Tell me what you know about this particular thing. And a lot of times it's because, the court can read a document that says, yeah, I talked to DCF and they said that mom is an abusive control freak. But then the judge may have follow-up questions like, well, what specifically did she do and when did she do it? And the probation officer might not have written it in his notes. So that's kind of when they're going to be called in to testify by the judge. Generally speaking, we're going to call them in to testify if there's a probation investigation. So if an investigation is done and there's a report done, we're going to have them come in and testify as to certain provisions in that document. What specifically, sir, you said this, and this, but didn't you also say here this? And is that contradictory? Does it help us? Does it hurt us? We want to point it out to the judge and make it kind of slap in the judge's face. So those are the types of things that we want to get across. The other things that they can testify is to, again, if they're doing that drug and alcohol screening and they have the results of the testing, then again, they can testify as to, yes, we had the results. We called John Smith to come in and to do a 12-panel drug test, and he tested positive for opioids and cannabis and whatever else on this day. Okay, and then did you retest him? And then they talk about those things. So that's kind of where it's going to come into play, as to, we want to know specifically about job seek. So anything that the probation officers are doing outside of their normal interactions with us, we can have them come in and testify at a trial and say, what specifically did this person do about finding jobs? What did this person do about, their relationship with their daughter? What did they do in terms of their hair follicle testing? So those are the types of things that they would be called in to testify. And I will say that that's a process. It's not an easy thing where I can just subpoena them because they don't really work for the court. They don't work for the court, they'll tell you that. But they work at the courthouse, so it's kind of weird. We have to go through a whole process, and we have to give them notice, and we have to do an extra step and then get a court order for them to testify. So it's certainly something that if you don't have an attorney, they're never going to come in and testify. You definitely need to have an attorney that knows the rules and explains it and can get them on the stand to testify.
Well, it sounds like they work hard and they can be quite useful when it comes to these family court cases and probation.
Absolutely. And, on a daily basis, we're meeting with them to negotiate, settlements. They come in and they say, you're here on a pretrial. What are we going to do on the pretrial? Oh, well, I want to have custody and this is the schedule I want. And the party says, nope, I want 50-50. Okay, well, what days are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for 3 days a week. And you're looking for 50-50. Okay, well, guys, we're about a half day off a week. And so they're going to kind of look at what that schedule really looks like and try to propose solutions to you. At the end of the day, they're going to make a recommendation to the court that the judge is ultimately going to see, saying, mom's position is this, dad's position is this, probation is recommending whatever they're recommending.
Is there anything else we should know about probation? If you have to have it in your family court case, what would you give as advice?
I think the easiest advice I can give you is have your forms ready. Show up at the designated time, have the forms ready. They're going to require you to complete forms. If you don't have all of your documentation ready and you're not there, then you're going to be waiting in line. And again, it's a first come, first serve. So if you're not ready and your ex isn't ready and they haven't handed in the paperwork, you could be sitting around for 2-3 hours before they're even calling your name. So biggest thing is make sure you talk to your attorney. They know what documents need to be filed. We have it ready. We do literally check in the line and I go, here's all your documents. I don't even have to go and stand in the other line. And hopefully if I can see the other parties in line, I go, come on over here. And then we hand it all in together, because that will save us a lot of time. Probation does a fabulous job, but they take a long time. And so as attorneys, sometimes we're sitting there for 2-3 hours waiting for the case to be called because we can't go and see the judge in advance. And if the other party won't talk to us, we're stuck. And I'm billing you for that. So really the ideal goal is to get in as quickly as possible. Listen to what the probation officer says. Sometimes you may not agree with their advice, but at least listen to them as to see it coming up with creative ideas and figuring out solutions.
Well, thank you so much. That is sage advice as usual. And I found this to be very interesting. I want to thank everyone for watching. And Nicole, you are phenomenal. So everyone out there, if you have a family case and you need some advice and if things just aren't going your way or your child's way and you'd like to get some help, please give the Reeves Lavallee law firm a call. They're out of Worcester. They are fantastic. And the strategies are solid. So thanks again. And I hope everybody has a great weekend.